Hello. I'm excited about today's panel discussion, and we'll be speaking with Ray Billingsley and Keith Knight, two amazing, innovative African-American comic creators. I'll be the moderator today. My name is Awan Mance. I'm a professor of English and Ethnic Studies at Mills College. I am also an illustrator, and I do comics as of 2014. But I'm really excited to be in the presence of a couple of people who have really inspired me, and I think it probably really inspired others who are interested in or create comics too. And so I will ask our two panelists to introduce themselves. Ray, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. My name is Ray Billingsley, and I am the creator of a comic strip called Curtis. And it's my second comic strip. My first one was Looking Fine. It also featured Black characters. But Curtis has been my claim to fame so far. It made its debut in '88, and it's still running strong. It's a strip that's very topical, and I could always add things that are happening in society now, which is why it's always evolving. I'm not the type of person that can do the same thing over and over and over again. I get highly bored. And I don't know how some of the comic creators can do it after so many years. But my thing is, about experimentation. So I've had a very long career. I started out selling cartoons in 1969. And I haven't done anything since. So I tell people I have lived an entire life on a deadline, and that's no lie. I don't know what life had been like without somebody telling me I have to have something in at a certain time. But you get used to it, and it becomes so natural. But I've touched on almost everything I could do, except what Keith is doing, where he has a show, called Woke, all about him. Okay, now that is fantastic. It's something to be applauded because this is not an industry that's very welcoming to Blacks. There's a small handful of us currently working now, and I don't even see any new ones in the makings in terms of the syndicate. Thank God for the internet, because I get to see a lot of voices that I would have not heard otherwise. It's such a hard industry, but it's even harder on Black Americans. It just is. And it's always a battle. It's always a struggle. And I tell people, just as long as you're alive, have the hope. Have the hope that you will be the one to break the gates wide open. Because right now we've opened the doors, but we're basically still just looking in them. We look through the doors. We haven't broken open. We have no Calvin and Hobbes or Garfields or things like that, but we're working our behinds off. And I tell people also it's because our experience is so different. We weren't the types growing up, flying kites and, you have the white picket fence. That wasn't the normal life for most of us. So what we write about is things that are different. And I know Keith can attest to this. I know plenty of times he must have gotten letters from irate people saying, you can't say this, you can't say that. And that gives us the label of being mad cartoonists, angry. And that's not the case. We're not angry. We're just telling our side of the story. That's all. I'm not Peanuts. I'm not Blondie, and I don't try to be. I talk about things that were taboo way back in '88. You could barely talk about anything, and I started right away. And I was in trouble for for most of my career. There's always somebody complaining, but I'm at the point where I just keep doing what I'm doing. Don't really care. I just keep doing it.
Yeah, and thank you for keep on keeping on doing it. I was doing
Oh, yeah.
research on your work, and was it Ebony that you contributed to? Like,
Oh yeah,
once I saw
yeah.
your work, I realized that like I grew up going through my parents' Ebonies and like seeing your work,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so thank you for existing, because
You're welcome. You're welcome. That's very nice.
yeah, it's like you are that connection from between Maury Turner and Aaron McGruder.
Right.
You held it down. And my name's Keith Knight. I do the K Chronicles single panel think, and I did the Nightlife, a daily syndicated strip, up until last fall, and then when I stopped it to work on the show Woke, which is streaming on Hulu. It's inspired by my life and my time in San Francisco, and it's streaming now. So please check it out so we can get a second season. But again, it's thank you for what you do, Ray, and just
you'll get a second season. You'll get it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've heard people talk about it, and everything has been favorable. And what's amazing to me is that you guys found an actor that looks like you.
Well,
Favors you so much,
he does an amazing job, and yeah, I'm just so blessed to have, I want to say stumbled into all this, but just like so many planets aligned for this to happen, and I am just so fortunate that it happened. But let's get on to questions.
Yes.
Enough about me.
Well, for our question today, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start now, and then I'm going to work our way backwards in terms of the topics of my question. So the first question I want to ask, it's a very unusual and unique time in the history of the United States, as well as in world history. And so my first question would be, why do Black comics and frankly television shows based on Black comics, why do they matter for us today?
Keith,
Oh,
you have the
yeah.
TV show.
Well, no, I mean, why do they matter? I mean, representation matters.
Yes.
It's having various voices matter. I would often say that cats have better representation in the on the comics page than Black people do.
Right.
And it's not just the comics page. I did a talk at my school a couple of years ago, and I just told people that all the books we were assigned in school, we had more books where animals were the protagonists,
Right.
more than people of color.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was a college student that I got books by Maya Angelou and James Baldwin and Richard Wright. Like, we need diversity, and not just Black folks. Like, everybody needs diversity, because we just get this curriculum that uplifts white people and downplays the contributions of people of color in this country, and it's detrimental to what this nation pretends that it is.
Right.
So that's why it's so important.
And you know what? To me, it's been a battle all the way. Now, starting out in '69, if you remember your history, we know what was going on in '68. So I came in right after all that and really tried to make a difference. What you were talking about earlier about Maury Turner, yeah, we had Maury Turner and Brumsit, Brandon, and that was about it. And then I came along, and I tried to pick up where they left off, because I know they were trying to break down some barriers, but they were being very careful. And I knew that I had to really represent, because as you were saying, cats have bigger representation, than we do. And I just felt it was important we have that voice. Maury Turner, when we met, he said, well, Ray, if you really want to make money and be seen, draw about white kids or animals. And I said, Maury, you know, I can't do that. I can't do it. It'll be turned to my back, you know, on my folks. And I said, I just can't do it. So I kept pushing ahead with the Black agenda. And there has been pushback every step of the way. Okay, I've got the title of the last pioneer. Okay, that means nothing. In publishing and all that means nothing. And of course, who are we trying to appease? We're not really trying to appease Black producers because there's not enough of them out there. And I know the ones that I approached didn't really have any interest in doing anything further. I'm still trying to get an animation deal now. And I mean, it's been well over 10 years. And when you see the animated properties that are out there now, there is no reason why I couldn't get out there. There's no reason. A lot of it is pretty bad. You know, there's a lot of bad offerings. And I know myself, I would choose to do something a lot better, a lot stronger. And I've got to have that Black representation.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a lot to chew on. And it makes me think of this other question. You know, both of you have mentioned Maury Turner. And so I'm curious, you know, when I think about people like Maury Turner, way back, she died in the 1980s, Jackie Orms, who was one of the first Black people to come out and create those comics. For some reason, for these Black comics pioneers, this medium let them tell stories that perhaps they couldn't tell or reach people they might not be able to reach in another form. So I'd like to ask both of you, why this medium? You have a powerful voice, you have really interesting things to say, and it really works for you. But how did you know? Why did you choose comics?
Well, let's see. In my case, it wasn't so much I actually chose it. It sort of chose me. I don't ever remember a time that I was not drawing. And I remember it was in my 3rd grade. I had a teacher named Mrs. Nelson, and she's in the strip as Curtis's teacher. She was the first to notice that I had artistic talent. And she wrote it on my report card for my parents to see. Because other than that, I was an upstart. I was in trouble. I was in trouble all the time. But I used to like to do art. So we fast forward a little bit. When I was in junior high school is where it all started. My class was doing an ecology project, even then. And it was to construct a 18-foot tall aluminum can Christmas tree in front of a hospital. Well, I thought it was kind of silly. I really wasn't into the project, so I got off to the side and I started drawing. And there was a little media coverage there, but you know, I didn't really care about that. But I was approached by a woman who wanted to see what I was doing. And I let her see it. And she asked if she could keep it. And I said, sure. You know, back in those days, kids were safe, okay? Adults could talk and it was safe. But she took the drawing and she took my phone number. And I think that was on a Thursday. That Monday, she called me up and she was the editor of a magazine. And it was called Kids Magazine. And she wanted me to come down and do a drawing for some sort of poetry, a short story. And they liked it so much that they hired me. And I became a staff artist at 12. And that's how this whole thing started. My father, like Curtis's father, was a real miser. He did not believe in allowances or giving children money at all. Anything you had, you earned on your own. So with me going to Kids Magazine, I was actually earning a living. They gave me $5 per drawing. And mind you, $5 was a lot to a 12-year-old kid in '69. Mm. And it's not like I said, I'm going to be a cartoonist. It's just that I kept going to interviews and landing the jobs over and over and over. And before I knew it, I was actually making a career. So for me, that's how it started. I didn't actually choose it. I just fell into it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I really like the comment on your website, Ray. If you ask, 20 different cartoonists how they got into it, you get
Right.
20 different stories.
Right.
For me, I always knew I was going to be a cartoonist. Like, just I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I remember doing my first parody. I remember being praised for my dinosaur drawings in kindergarten. And then I remember doing my own version of Mad Magazine in fourth grade and fifth grade. It was called Kooky Magazine. And I didn't have access to a copy machine. So I would draw the same exact issue and then sell it, and then draw the same exact issue. It was bizarre. But I realized that I could get better grades if I worked my drawings into my schoolwork. And the only thing I couldn't get better grades on was in math. Like, you can't pretty up math. It's either right or wrong, right?
Right.
But like, my art teachers discouraged me from doing cartoons. They thought it was lowbrow stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So my art teachers were discouraging me. My English teachers were the ones who were into comics and encouraged me to do cartoons. And I had a teacher when I was a junior in high school. Instead of a book report, we read Animal Farm, George Orwell's Animal Farm, and he let me do a comic book report instead of a book report. I told him, I said, I can't do justice, like, unless I can draw something. Can I draw something?
Right.
So what I did was I did a parody of Animal Farm. So instead of farm animals taking over the farm and kicking out the humans, I had me and my friends take over the high school and kick out all the teachers. And we had rules like 18 and over bad, 18 and under good, like that type of thing. And I did caricatures of all my teachers, and my English teacher loved it. He went nuts, and he actually kept it in the teachers' lounge to show all the teachers. And he wrote back to me. He gave me an A++ and said, you captured the essence of Animal Farm perfectly, but more importantly, you should be doing a syndicated comic strip. So that was like the first time I heard syndicate. And, I went to the local paper and was like, I want to do a comic strip with my dad. He took me there, and they said, well, we get our stuff from a syndicate, and this is what a syndicate is. And so that's the first time I really understood that. And but I kept on doing it. I did stuff for my high school newspaper, my college newspaper. And then when I graduated school, I went out to San Francisco, and that's where I discovered underground cartooning and the legacy of indie cartooning. And that's where I saw that it didn't have to be just a daily, and the subject matter didn't have to be, it could be a bit more risque. It could be about politics and race and frankly, sex and drugs, and you can get a little crazy with it. And that's where I found my voice and went from there. So. And to this day, people still think I'm in San Francisco, which is really funny because I left in 2007, which is interesting.
I like to pretend you're still in San Francisco. Like, oh, Bay Area. But that's fascinating. I mean, early start. Oh, Ray, were you going to?
Now, San Francisco was one of the places I used to love to visit. And I actually looked for apartments, but this was like 10 years ago. They were way too expensive even then.
Yeah.
Okay. San Francisco was always way expensive. It's not about a thing of affording it. I mean, it's a thing of, is that all you want to do? Do you just want to make money just to pay the rent?
Pay rent,
and
yeah.
drive a car around. And of course, the traffic there is horrendous. So.
Well, my advice to anybody is wait for the next big earthquake. So the next big earthquake, I moved there just after the '89 earthquake. There were tons of vacancies, like people just took off. Rent was low. The next big earthquake that hit San Francisco, that's when you go in. And this time, when you go in, buy something because it's going to go back up.
That is so morbidly sick. It's wonderful.
I feel like there's a comic in that.
Yeah,
I already did it.
Okay, yeah, all right, I gotta find it.
that's really good. I used to hear stories about people in New York that used to check for apartments by looking at the obituaries.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh,
they
yeah.
died, the apartment was free. So, you know, it's sick, but it's what you got to do. I never thought about it from an earthquake point of view.
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that about
the whole New York apartment thing just fascinates me because people will have leases for like decades.
Right.
I knew a guy in San Francisco who never gave up his apartment in New York, and he had leased it, and you know, he pays barely anything, but someone is paying crazy amounts of money for it. And I like, there's a whole graphic novel just about the stories of what people do with New York apartments, because it's kind of crazy.
Urban Real Estate, the graphic novel.
Yeah.
It needs to be done.
Well, see, that's something for you to write.
Oh no, not me. I'm working on something that I've been working on forever, which was my I was a teenage Michael Jackson impersonator. Which I was in '84, and so I've been working on that forever. And once that I did it on Kickstarter, and once that got approved, is right when the machinations of the show started to happen. And so like, everyone just kept on saying, okay, well, you know, just put your time into working on the show, and then they'll kill it at some point, and then you can get back to your graphic novel. But we just kept on making it to the next step and the next step and the next step, and it's like, oh, like, this is really going to happen.
Wow.
So I praise my Kickstarter folks for, you know, I've updated them on the journey, and they've been super patient in just watching this happen. So, and if you look at the show in the first episode, you can actually see a page from the Michael Jackson impersonator graphic novel on the desk of my character in the
God, I got to check it out.
Yeah.
I have to go back and look at it.
It's weird, but it's like a little Easter egg. I just did an Easter egg strip for the first episode. So
wow, I'm gonna have to rewatch and look for that.
That's the way. I have this whole plan for everyone to watch the episodes like 20 different times and be like, here's the next wave of Easter egg.
I guess, you know, Keith, what you were saying kind of leads me to a question that I usually ask at the end, but I'm going to ask this right now. And that is, what are you working on right now?
For me, we're actually, you know, we're hoping, honestly, to get a season 2, obviously. And we're just doing as much promotion as we can to get, you know, to get people on board to check out the show and watch it all the way through to the end, and watch it again, because you do see a lot more if you watch it again. But also at the same time, again, working on the graphic novel, continuing my weekly strips, and really like filling orders, because I think like there's a whole new group of folks who are finding out that I exist, and like my website has, like, the sales off of it has gone up like 400, 500%, and like my kids are helping me fill orders, but it's crazy how many orders I have. It's
Wow.
it's
That's great.
Yeah, it's exciting, but it's daunting too.
Wow.
Luckily, you have a couple of personal assistants.
Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah. We
Actually,
have Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the same thing I'm looking for. I want to try to get a couple of assistants, because I do everything myself, and it's tiresome. I've got the 3 self-published books. There's a whole series more that I have in mind to do. I just need some people to help me with it. And also, like I said, we're in talks for this animated series, which pray I can get that. I'm in talks with one of the people tomorrow, And we're already trying to line up some actors, some actual actors. I know Orlando Jones is into it,
Mm,
and we're
cool.
actually trying to talk to Kevin Hart to play the voice of one of the kids. You know, it will bring a whole different take to that character. But everything is it's a hurry up and wait thing. You know, they want the things right away, and then you wait for a couple of months and you hear back. So I have the strip to keep me busy in between all that. But ever since this COVID thing has been going on and I've really been touching into it, I'm doing a lot of these, a lot of podcasts, a lot of shows. And I mean, the time is just being taken up. I mean, right after this, I have to go back and I have to work on my deadline for tomorrow. So life is very busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So
This
you're
is the
not
number
making.
one thing. I tell people all the time, I don't want to try to do everything myself. I want to find other people who are creative and who have their own voice, their own definite voice to sort of work along with. I've never wanted to be like the type to say, here, it's only this way, it's only this way. I'm open to other people's ideas. And, you know, that's what I'm looking forward to. And especially, like I said, the young folk or anyone that feels inspired by what's being done and, you know, maybe trying to make a name for themselves or just love doing it, I want to do with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the greatest thing about working on the show is
Yeah.
it's a whole group effort. So, you know,
Right.
as cartoonists, you're used to just being by ourselves and you know, I think the greatest thing about the medium of cartooning is you have a pen, which is, you know, about $2, a piece of paper, which is about, you know, 50 cents, and you can create anything,
Anything.
absolutely anything. You don't have to worry about budgets and like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
oh, we can't shoot we can't shoot in Egypt. Oh, we can't do this on the moon. We can't, you know, like you just create it and people automatically buy into it. Like nobody sits there and looks at Garfield and says, well, cats don't really eat lasagna. Like no one questions it. You're automatically
Right.
bought into it. And that's the great medium of cartooning. Now, the great medium, the great thing about television, it is all these collaborative people that get together. And I was so lucky, like Maurice Marable, the director, is the one who said, you know, instead of 2D animation, I want to use puppetry. I want to use like all this sort of 3D type stuff. And that made it, I think, look so much richer and added to the magical realism. And then we had Stanley Clark compose the music for it. And it's just so wonderful. And then Issa Rae's company, Radio, did all the needle drops and they brought all this gorgeous music into it. And obviously the writers and the actors taking the dialogue and just creating, you know, just magic. And so to have that many creative people come together and just do like it's, you know, I couldn't imagine something so fun and rich and all this different stuff, you know. So it's such a great balance because if everyone does drive me crazy, I can just go to my hotel room and then just work on a comic by myself, you know. So it's a great balance. It really is.
That's really interesting. I mean, you know, this, you know, taking your art talent, both of you, in so many interesting ways. I guess, you know, this is a question, of course, all of my questions are for both of you. And one is, I guess, gosh, I have two questions. The first one I'll ask, because we've got about 15 more minutes. We talked a little bit about some of your influences, you know, Maury Turner, some of the other folks, but I'm wondering, other people whose work is really exciting to you now? Are there people whose work you're looking at now and thinking, this is really interesting, I'm thinking about new directions because I'm seeing this, or I just want to see where this goes? What in comics or other forms of media is really interesting to you right now that's influential to you? I'm really curious to know about that.
Well, I've got one. Right now, I'm really crazy about, it's a different kind of show there, Keith. It's called Lovecraft.
Ah, yes.
And it's the first time I've actually seen a black cast that can time travel, and they have monsters in them and things like that, life and death things. That inspires me because it lets me know that the vision of America is opening. We weren't allowed to do that just a few years ago. It wouldn't have been accepted. And there's some people that I've seen on the internet who are posting some things, and I mean, their work is really great. And it keeps me interested, but it gets lost sometimes in so much. There's so many people posting that, sometimes it's hard to stand out. But that Lovecraft right now, that's a killer. I love that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Wow.
Yeah,
For all the reasons you've named.
yeah. I'm totally, of course, spaced on people's names. Bianca Eunice, is that how you pronounce your last name? Um,
I'm,
it's Bianca
I'm not
Eunice, I
sure.
think, but she's a black cartoonist who, she was part of Six Chicks, and it's six women each do a daily, and she
Right,
did this amazing cartoon that had a black woman with a mask on, and then she had an "I Can't Breathe" T-shirt, and there
right,
was like
Yeah.
a Karen looking at her, going, "Well, then just take off the mask." Like, she's looking at her T-shirt,
Yeah.
and it's caused this whole crazy stir. And I don't know if it was the syndicate that apologized or the papers that apologized, but like, it just, it's
Well,
so silly that, like,
tell you,
yeah,
knowing the syndicate, because she's under my
yeah,
syndicate, they were not the first to apologize.
yeah,
King Features stands up behind
yeah,
us. When we do things, because like I say, I get in trouble so much that I'm used to it.
yeah,
But the syndicate always backs me. So I know they backed her also. If
yeah,
anything, it was the papers who apologized for her. And I wrote to her afterwards and I said, you go for it. Don't say you're sorry. You stand your ground.
yeah, yeah,
This is your world. You're inviting people to it. If they want to be part of it, fine. If not, fine again. But just make sure you let your own voice come out. But
yeah.
King so far has been very good with things like that.
Yeah, and just like, I mean, and that's really what's the problem with like newspapers, is just like they're so afraid of offending, like losing readers, and it's silly because they need to attract new readers, like,
Right. That's right.
because
That's
these
right.
readers that they've had forever are going to be gone, and they need to start attracting. So to just even have issues like that, and even so, I always would tell my editors, if someone is complaining enough to write directly to you, you that's actually a quality reader. Like, whether they're complaining or praising, they're
Right.
engaged. I'd
Right.
rather have people complain about my comic strip than just be like, just not
Right.
even read it. So I think that's super important. But I'm all, whenever I get asked these questions, I always space out on everybody's names. But there are so many creators, and I'm talking about writers and cartoonists and musicians, that are,
Oh yeah.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
creating so much neat stuff. And for me, it's a joy to see it, but it's also for me, I love looking at how they're getting it out, because I don't think anybody not many people are seeking to be syndicated anymore. Ray
Right.
is lucky because for me, I knew when I launched my daily in 2008, I had missed, if I had launched it 10 or 15 years before as a daily, then I probably would have gotten into more newspapers, and I would be in enough newspapers that I would have been tenured in. But I launched in the worst year of the newspaper industry, 2008. That's when the bottom fell out. And so I was never in enough papers to really justify like me. I mean, I did it for 11 years, and I'm glad I did it, but like I was also frustrated knowing that whenever I did a good one, I'd be like, no one's seeing this. I never was in that many newspapers, but the one thing it still has, it has cachet in Hollywood. Hollywood recognizes that there are only probably like 50 people in this country that are nationally syndicated cartoonists, and like 50 people that's all they have to do. So it still comes with cachet. Like, you know, I didn't tell Hollywood that, like, you know, I had to do several other things to make a living. They just knew I was a nationally syndicated cartoonist. So so that does have a lot of cachet. And if there's any advice that I give to anybody, is Hollywood is looking for intellectual property. Like that is it. And Ray, you know, something that bodes well is like this moment in time, they are looking for Black properties. You know, I don't know how long it's going to be, this door is going to be open. My concern was this when we did the show was I don't want to, it's going to take 2 flops for the door to close again. And I just didn't want to be one of those flops.
Oh God, that's what I worry about. That's the one thing I worry about. That's why I say I gotta have more hits than misses.
And
just for what Keith said, just 2 flops and the door closes. Just 2.
And so right now, I mean, right now it's a moment in time with Lovecraft Country, with The Watchmen, with Issa Rae, with Donald Glover. You know, there's all this stuff that's, you know, right now stuff is open. And we have to get as many of us in as possible. And hopefully, you know, we can get into positions of power. Like Ray said, instead of, we need to be the gatekeepers. Because once we become the gatekeepers, then they're much more open to magical realism. They're much more open to romance. Like everything that's approved now that has to do with Black folks has to do with some sort of oppression, you know? And so like, whether it's Lovecraft Country, whether it's my show, whether it's Watchmen, it has to do somehow with oppression. And there needs to be more just fantasy and more joy, and that's not going to happen until we are in those approval positions. So
Interesting. And so I think that kind of points to the question that I'm sure you've answered many times before, both of you. But if someone is interested in doing what you're doing, if someone wants to get out there and create comics for a national audience, or create comics and then have them as the basis for a television show, if someone wants to live the dream the way that you both are doing that, what is the advice that you would have for people who are just getting started?
Right.
Keith, you want to go first?
Yeah, please.
You want to do it?
Yeah. Well, this is what I'll say. I just say, and I hate to sound like Nike, but just do it. Like, put pen to paper. That's, you know, to me, that's it. And we didn't really touch on Jackie Orms. Jackie Orms, you know, she created this comic strip that reflected her reality. And she was a groundbreaker in the fact that she was talking about issues that were in her life, and it was groundbreaking. And I think whenever I speak to people, I just say, like, tell your story, like, put pen to paper and tell your story. Because if you don't tell your story, someone else is going to tell it for you, and they're going to get it all wrong. So tell your story. And I think that the cheapest, simplest way is to put pen to paper. And if not pen to paper, then the stylus to the Wacom tablet or whatever, you know, and tell your story. And, you know, I would say, like, at this point, young cartoonists, I don't urge them to go to syndicates. I would say either get together a Patreon page, which, you know, Patreon is this website that allows people to subscribe to your work and support, like, via monthly payments. And that's what helped me transition from when the newspaper industry dried up to getting to woke. I was able to support my family because of Patreon, and I continue with that to this day. And it's just it's a great, but there's plenty of other avenues to go to using that. But just putting together a website, just having that, I always took email addresses. So I have this huge database of people. So whenever I put out something, and Ray, I self-publish my smaller, my books. You know, I just do it myself because I had a small publisher that said, Keith, frankly, you sell more books than we do. So we'll distribute your books to the book trade, but, you know, you make instead of making barely anything per book, you know, I make $10 per book because I self-publish them. And I just do them in small batches, 1,000 at a time, and just sell them. And there's a way to make it as a cartoonist without the traditional things. And here's the other thing, and I don't want to discourage, I don't want to say bad things, because I think it's nice that there's schools out there doing comic book, sequential art, degrees and stuff like that. California College of Arts has a master's in cartooning. That's great if you can afford it, but I know it is not cheap. I think it's 40 grand a year. And when you're submitting somewhere, no one is asking you for your degree in cartooning. You know, if instead of paying 40 grand to get a cartooning education, I say save up 10 grand, buy a ticket to Europe, buy a Euro-Rail pass, and then just draw in cafes around. I mean, not during COVID time, but like just travel and draw your experiences. That would be my advice.
See, I really go along with the travel bit, that's for sure. But see, I'm also very sinful. And I go to places like Amsterdam. Amsterdam is one of my favorite places.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful. Everything is going on. And, you know, creativity is flying out the window. It's a great thing to do. But, you know, I wanted to bring something up. We were talking about Jackie. Have you heard of Samuel Joyner?
Samuel Joyner. I don't think so.
I think.
Well, you know what? I try to keep his name alive because he was also a pioneer from back in those times. I first met Sam, might have been 40 years ago now. And he used to tell me these stories about how he started. And during his time, he was a really great artist, right? He did a lot of stuff about politics and things, something blacks were really not supposed to do. And for him to offer his work to magazines or newspapers, he had to get his white buddy to come along and say he was Sam Joyner to sell comics. And he did that for almost his entire career. He had to have a white guy do it because it was back in those times. Now, also, I wanted to sort of touch in on what you said about the schools and all that. I'm not always such a believer in schools. I went to music and art high school, but I was already being published, so they didn't teach me anything. All right. If anything, I had teachers who were angry at me because I was being published and they weren't. And then when I went to the School of Visual Arts, I only went there because I got a scholarship.
Mm.
I was ready to go into the field right after high school. I was already there. And like Keith was saying, nobody asked you for your degree. When you're holding up a portfolio, they're not saying, are you from Cal? You know, are you from Pratt? That, you know, they don't care. So I've always told people what you do is study. Study, read all you can, take in the visuals. That's why travel is good if you can travel, but look at everything with an artist's eye and learn to be a good writer. Write your stuff, don't fall in love with it, throw it away, come back and write it again with a fresh eye and challenge yourself, push yourself to do better and better. And that's why I say, for one, I was mainly self-taught. And it was because I kept experimenting. If there was something that caught my eye, I wanted to try to do it myself. And in that way, my own techniques got better and better. And I think a lot of stuff can't really be taught. It might be honed, but I think the initial step has to come from what you put into it. When I get kids that come to me and they want me to mentor them, first thing I ask them is, how serious are you about this? Do you want the real answers, or do you just want to hear what you want to hear? Because I could tell you, oh, your work is wonderful, you know, la la la, it's great, when I'm not really thinking that. But if you want the real answers, I could help mold you. I could help train you if you're willing to listen. And I always tell them, one thing about it is you can't get mad. That's one of the things. You can't get angry at me for disagreeing or trying to tell you to do something else. So these different avenues, I think, really help hopefuls coming up, whether they're very young or, you know, much older. It's just the kind of devotion and dedication that you put to it. And I too, I don't know if I would put my chances that much on syndicates anymore, because they're really hard to get into, and they have pretty much a 60s decade attitude, you know, which is why so many of their strips are not only old, but they're old fashioned. They don't really fit in today's world. In their attempt not to insult anyone, they try to keep it that way. I argue the point when they tell me, well, you know, kids might be watching it. I say, yeah, but kids are watching Family Guy. Kids are watching American Dad. What do you think is going on? You know, they have Netflix and Hulu and all that. These kids are not as innocent as you portray them to be. But of course, you know, they still want to keep us there. I had an argument, well, a couple of weeks ago, where I told them, I said, look, despite all your efforts, you're not going to make Curtis into a Black High and Lois. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to be sweet like that. So just, you know, just get that out of your head, and we just argue back and forth. You know, but that's how I feel about it. What he was talking about with the Patreon, that could help. I've had a couple of students that went that route, but they were upset because when they started really counting on the steady money in, the flow would go somewhere else. And I said, the hard part is you have to keep inventing yourself if you want people to keep subscribing to you. It's almost like you meeting a girlfriend or a lover for the first time. You know, you go out and everything is sweet and everything, you holding hands and, you know, you feeding each other at the table. But, you know, 4 months later, you come and you just say, oh, hi, how you doing? I'm doing okay. The magic sort of wears off. So, but of course, if you reinvent yourself, when that person comes over, they go, wow, hey, let's get busy, you know, and it keeps the tension. And that's what a lot of young hopefuls have to do. They have to be ready to turn on a dime and to reinvent themselves and to just make themselves more marketable in today's time. But I'm not really sure that the syndicate is the way to go.
Yeah, yeah.
The syndicate is a grind.
Yeah.
It's a grind. I do this every day, and I mean, when my mom's died, and I told the syndicate, the first thing they said was, "How's your deadline?" And I'm like, "What the? My deadline?" I said, "My mom's just died." "Oh, well, you know, we need your work." That's messed up.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but it's what you got to deal with syndicates.
Yeah, yeah. But
I've had kids tell me, "Oh, Mr. Billingsley, you know, I wish I was where you were at. I wish I was doing what you're doing." And I said, "You know what? You better think about what you're saying. You better think about it, because everything is not as rosy as you might think it is. I might make it look easy and all that stuff, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's really not. And it takes a thick skin to do cartooning. It takes a real hard skin to do it."
And just, you know, don't be afraid to fail. That's the other thing I would tell young people is, like, you know, that's part of the learning experience is failure. And so if you're tentative, you're afraid to try something because you're afraid it won't work out, then that's the wrong way to go, because you'll always regret it, you know.
Right.
So.
Right.
That's great. Well, I think we're out of time, which is a bummer, because I think that I could talk to you for another hour. I feel like I have my own personal questions. But before we part, if you can just both of you tell us, where can we see your work, and if someone wants to write you, how can they get in touch?
For me, it's my kchronicles.com website, KCHRONICLES.com, but also my Patreon. My Patreon is the one that's updated the most. And you can buy my books at kchronicles.com, but to see the latest work, Patreon Keith Knight, KEEF KNIGHT.
And Ray.
All right. Well, let's see. As for myself, I have a site. It's called www.billingsleyart.com. Billingsley Art is one word. And you can get in touch with me through there. I sort of have some things about my journey. I tell you, I'm not really a type of person, I don't really talk about myself that much. These things like this is sort of special, and you don't know, it's kind of hard for me to talk about myself, really. But at least through the site, I actually answer a lot more questions than I do now. You'd be surprised how withdrawn I am. I'm really sort of an introvert. But of course, there's Facebook and Instagram. I might post something maybe once a month, because, like I say, I don't really talk that much. You know, I know people that's on all the time, and I don't really do it. Facebook, I'll accept you as a friend and we talk back and forth, but I rarely post on there either. King Features has Comics Kingdom, which is I think that's $15 a year subscription, but you get to see my strip and everyone else's strip, and you could knock us all down and say which is good and which really stinks. So, you know, that sort of thing is fun.
That's great. Great. Well, thank you so much. You're both really an inspiration, and I love your work, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Nice.